Hi everybody. If you've ever owned an RV, chances are at some point you've considered solar panels. Solar panels can be a great alternative power source for your RV, but they do come with their own specific set of rules and requirements, and those might be a little bit different than your traditional RV power sources. So we've equipped this RV with rooftop solar panels. We're going to show you how we did it, and today the Parts Counter Gurus are going to take you through the 5 W's of RV solar panels, and that starts right now. Alright, so some people are going to tell you that solar panels aren't worth it. Others are going to tell you that they're too expensive to do the job, or they're not worth the money that you put into them. And others are going to tell you they're too difficult to install. And while some or all of this may be true for some people, perhaps the best way to go about this, if you're thinking about solar panels for your RV, is to create a list of what you want to power, or define what it is that you want to accomplish with these solar panels. And if you use that as your starting point, it's going to be a whole lot easier to determine if they're worth it. So in my case, I've got 4 deep cycle batteries and a battery bank, and most of my rig is electric. So it's an induction cooktop, it's a convection microwave combo, and I have a water heater that's dual gas and electric. So there's a lot of electric powered amenities in the RV. The fridge, by the way, in this RV is a residential fridge, and it is 100% RV, 100% electric. It is not like a dual gas propane electric. The residential ones usually are electric only. So those were all great reasons for me to look at solar panels. I've got a pretty great generator. It's a Cummins Onan in this rig, and we like to go out a lot of places like in national parks where you can't run the generator all day, and if you're going to stay there more than 2 or 3 days, you're going to be pulling down those battery banks quite a bit with that fridge running, with some of those other things that you need. So this was a great supplemental power source, and I will tell you that with the solution that we went with, which I'll talk about a little bit more here in just a minute, it has really done the job. It's been in place now for about 3 months, and it keeps me from abusing my generator. Those generators are expensive to maintain. I just did a 500-hour service on it, and it was about $600 and change. So if I can keep the batteries topped off without having to run the generator so much, to me that's a win, and it does offset some of the maintenance costs of that generator. Alright, so the panels that we decided to go with here are 190 watts each. These are the Overlander series by GoPower. One of the reasons I went with them was, of course, the wattage. The other one was that GoPower is commonly used in the RV industry, and they have a pretty good reputation. The hookup cabling that it came with went directly into my RV, which was pre-wired with solar prep, and we'll get to what that means in just a minute. But essentially it made the job a little bit easier because there was some cabling that was already run. The purpose of a charge controller is to regulate the charge and the amount of electricity coming from those solar panels to your battery, and it will do 2 things. It will keep your battery from being overcharged. It'll keep from cooking your battery because it will detect the voltage, and it will basically stop or float when the batteries get to a certain charge voltage. And they will also provide, some of them anyway, will provide direct power to some devices. Now, all charge controllers are not created equal, and some charge controllers will have a certain amperage, and others will do more. So this particular charge controller that I'm using is a 30 amp charge controller, and I had to do the math, and then I talked to the guys at Go Power about how many panels that I could hook up to this charge controller. There is a limit, and in my case it was 3, and if I were to use any more than 3 solar panels, I would essentially overpower the charge controller. It wouldn't be able to handle anymore. So the charge controller is going to come into effect, or it's going to be a factor in considering how much power you need and what you want to run. So again, you want to go back to that list or that initial kind of determination of what it is you want to power. Some of these charge controllers, mine included, will provide direct power to things like DC, like lights, fans, that sort of stuff, and you can run directly off of the solar panels. One of the things you're probably not going to be able to do with solar panels is to run air conditioning. So just keep that in mind. That's something that's going to take an awful lot of power, and most of these setups would require way more solar panels on the roof than you have roof space to do something like that. So you're basically limited to anything you can run off battery power. To this point, you've been watching us kind of just unpack, and you've listened to me kind of talk about the why and the how, but one of the things that you need to do, and you're watching us kind of do it in process here, is we're picking the locations that we want to put these things. So once we got everything unpacked, we literally took them up to the roof and planned a layout. And you've got to take things into consideration, like if you have solar prep already on the RV, where is that connector on the roof? And then where are these panels going to fit? And you need to remember to leave enough space for service on the roof. You need to be able to walk around the roof from front to back without having to get down off the ladder, move the ladder, and then go back up to a different spot. So be careful not to block roof access. You need to leave yourself a pathway, and you need to make sure that these aren't in a place where they'll get stepped on and cracked or broken. Here at the Parts Encounter Gurus, we are pretty careful on attention to detail and things being symmetrical and even and lined up and all that. So what we did, you can see Jay doing this here, is we got up on the roof, we literally spaced everything evenly on one side, then we went over to the panel on the other side of the roof, and we made sure that it was equidistant from everything on that side. And then we got a Sharpie out, and we literally marked our holes, and you'll see that us doing that here in a second. We loosely assembled everything once we got it up on the roof. So we put the brackets in place, we just lightly tightened them, and what that did is it helped us know exactly where these things were going to sit, exactly where those brackets were going to sit. We were able to mark the holes before we drilled them, and we just triple checked the location on everything and made absolutely certain that before we drilled, we knew where these things were going to go and what that was going to look like. Now, here's just a quick note on drilling into your roof if you have a membrane roof like the one you're seeing here. I've seen suggestions on solar panel attachment kits that are basically adhesives, so it's called like a no drill or no screw attachment. You want to avoid those things like the plague. Absolutely under no circumstances do you want to try to attach a solar panel to your membrane roof without drilling into your roof. And the reason for that is that membrane, in many cases, is just vacuum sealed to the roof. That's all that's holding it to the roof. And with a big wind that picks up, especially driving down the road, you're over time eventually going to rip that membrane loose. You're going to rip a hole in your roof, and you're probably going to lose your solar panels going down the highway, and those solar panels could end up flying into somebody else and causing serious injury. So I understand the concern of not wanting to drill holes in your roof. If you do it right and you use the right lap sealant and self-leveling sealant, absolutely it will not leak. If you do it right, if you drill the holes right, if you secure the screws, if you know what's underneath where you're drilling and you seal it properly, you are not going to have any leak issues. It's important to make sure that you use the right product to seal it, and we'll mention that product in the comments. So you can see what we just did here while I was talking. First we drilled the holes, then we just lifted up the bracket and we put some lap sealant down, and then we put the screws in, and that's the key, right? So you put your sealant down over the holes, and remember, we know where the holes are because we've got that we've got that bracket to show us. Then we put the screws through the holes and through the sealant, and that's going to grab to those screws, and it's going to seal those screws from the inside out. And then when we're done with that and we get the screws in, we'll put sealant on top of the screws. And it's also important to mention, you want to make sure you check the documentation. In our documentation, it said that we needed to have at least a 1/4 inch thick surface to drill into for proper bite. So you want to know what your roof thickness is, and probably the easiest way is just to call your manufacturer and give them your VIN number and ask them, and they should be able to tell you what your roof's made of and how thick it is. So while we're talking about drilling holes in the roof, one other thing I'll mention is that if your RV does not come pre-wired for solar hookups or the connectors on the roof, right? It's called solar prep in most cases. You are going to have to put a hole in your roof and run that wiring through the roof down into the coach. That is probably the hardest part of all of this if you do it after the coach is built, just because you've got to go through several layers of paneling and roofing from the top down through the inside. And then trying to hide that, of course, is usually most folks' goal. So if yours isn't already wired for solar prep, you might want to try to get like a diagram or some blueprints on the coach so that you can look at what's where. It's important to know where your existing wiring is, so that you don't drill or cut into something that's already there. And I would definitely take the time to do the research and know where stuff is before you start drilling through. Ultimately, you're going to terminate to a charge controller, and then from that charge controller, you're going to run another set of wires to your battery or your battery bay if you have more than one battery. All right, so coming up here, you're getting a look at what the panel looks like when it's finished in terms of the sealant being applied. There you go. Do not be stingy with that stuff. You want to apply it quite liberally, and you can see the existing stuff around the vent over there. They certainly didn't waste any. You put that stuff down and let it do its job. It's a roof. It's not going to hurt anything if you get a little bit extra up there. It's better to have too much of that sealant over your hole than not enough. All right, so as we get a little time lapse here in closing, and you'll be able to just kind of watch this project and fast forward from the very beginning to the end. It took us about an hour to an hour and a half to do this. We did plan it out beforehand, and I did make sure that I had all the parts that I needed ordered. You do need to measure the distance, and you need to know how much length of cable these panels come with, because if you put them in a place that requires extra cable, you need to make sure you get that and have it to hook up while you're up there. It's good to have a good adult beverage around while you're doing it, but remember, you are on the roof, and those roofs can be slippery, so not too many, right? As far as the finished product goes, I will tell you that having been able to use these for several months after they were installed, I am very pleased with it. They are expensive. Good solar panels run anywhere from $200 to $500 a piece, depending on the wattage and the quality of the panels. But again, thinking about the wear and tear on my generator, it's more than made up for itself in allowing me to not have to run that generator as often. So what I mean by that is we'll usually bring the rig home and park it in front of my house. I keep it in storage, and we'll do that a couple days before we leave for our trips. And we'll turn the fridge on, right? So we've got to give the fridge time to cool down, the icebox time to make ice and whatnot. And I would typically have to run the generator 2 or 3 times a day for an hour or two a pop each time I ran it to keep that battery charged. I never have to do that anymore. That's one of the best things that has happened with the installation of these panels, is that now I can just park the rig out front, turn the fridge on, and then 2 or 3 days later, I'm checking the battery charge, and it's fine. So that is a fantastic benefit of having these panels on. And, we also have the ability to go out in national parks now and not have to worry about the batteries being drained as long as we've got sun. They do take a pretty fair amount of sun to do their job, so if you're in an area that's pretty cloudy or it's cloudy a lot, you're not going to get the benefit. You can do this job yourself, but it's so much easier to do with a helper, and when you've got a helper as good as Jay with the experience that he had, it just made things go that much better because he was thinking of things that I hadn't thought of yet. So, I would say if you're going to do it by yourself, you might as well add another 50% to the duration that you think it's going to take. You just be careful, double, triple check everything, make sure that you're aware of what you're about to do before you do anything permanent, and exercise a little bit of caution and you'll be just fine. We're going to put in the comments section a list of everything that we used and where we got it. If you have a question, you're more than welcome to head on over to our website at partscounterguru.com. There's an Ask Us a Question button at the tab near the top, and you can drop us a line. Let us know what you're wondering, and we'll do our best to answer that and let you know either what we think or what we did or how we would do it. And while you're here, while you're watching this video, go ahead and do us a favor if you found this helpful and hit that subscribe button. That'll do us a huge favor. Like Jay always says, it doesn't cost you anything, but it's priceless to us. So that's it. You can do it. It's not a bad job, especially if your RV is already wired for solar prep. Thanks for watching, everybody. Remember to check us out at partscounterguru.com. We've got a podcast as well as lots of other great videos and helpful tips and articles on our website, and you can check us out there.